Cek. Good morning. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat, Bapak Dr. Danang Srihatmoko, SSI MSc, selaku Dekan Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Yang terhormat, Bapak Widiatno S. Hud, MSc PhD, Wakil Dekan Bidang Penelitian Pengabdian kepada Masyarakat dan Kerjasama Fakultas Kehutanan Universitas Gadjah Mada. Yang kami hormati, Ibu Dr. Diah Rahmawati Hisbaron, SSI MT, Wakil Dekan Bidang Penelitian Pengabdian kepada Masyarakat, Kerjasama dan Alumni Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Yang kami hormati, Kepala Kelompok Kerja Restorasi Gambut, Wilayah Kalimantan dan Papua, Badan Restorasi Gambut dan Mangrove Republik Indonesia. Yang kami hormati, Perwakilan Badan Penelitian dan Pengembangan Daerah Provinsi Kalimantan Timur. Yang kami hormati, Part of Collaboration Research on Following Frontiers of the Forest City Towards Sustainable and Inclusive Urbanization in Kalimantan and Beyond. Serta peserta Studium Generale Studying Frontiers of Development in Indonesia, baik yang ada di Zoom maupun live streaming YouTube Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Selamat datang dalam acara Studium Generale Studying Frontiers of Development in Indonesia. Puji syukur kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, karena atas rahmat dan hidayahnya lah kita dapat hadir dalam kuliah umum yang diadakan di Auditorium Merapi Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Sebelum acara dimulai, alangkah lebih baiknya kita berdoa terlebih dahulu. Berdoa menurut agama dan kepercayaan masing-masing, dipersilakan. Amin, berdoa dicukupkan. Perkenalkan, saya Charles selaku Master of Ceremony yang akan memandu jalannya acara Studium Generale pagi hari ini yang dilakukan secara luring di Fakultas Geografi dan daring melalui virtual Zoom meeting dan juga live streaming YouTube Fakultas Geografi oleh seluruh pembicara dan juga peserta. Adapun susunan acara yang akan berlangsung pada Studium Generale pagi kali ini, yaitu pembukaan, sambutan oleh Bapak Dr. Danang Srihatmoko, SSI MSc, Dekan Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada, sambutan oleh Bapak Widiatno S. Hud MSc, PhD, Wakil Dekan Bidang Penelitian Pengabdian kepada Masyarakat dan Kerjasama Fakultas Kehutanan Universitas Gadjah Mada. Pemaparan materi pertama oleh Dr. K. Otsuki, Project Investigator of Dutch Site of Research Collaboration on Following Frontiers of the Forest City Towards Sustainable and Inclusive Urbanization in Kalimantan and Beyond. Pemaparan materi kedua oleh Profesor Dr. Rijanta MSc, Project Investigator of Indonesian Site of Research Collaboration on Following Frontiers of the Forest City Towards Sustainable and Inclusive Urbanization in Kalimantan and Beyond. Kemudian dilanjutkan dengan diskusi dan juga tanya jawab, penyerahan software dan dokumentasi bersama, dan terakhir penutup. Baik, Bapak, Ibu, dan hadirin sekalian, acara dilanjutkan dengan sambutan oleh Dekan Fakultas Geografi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Yang terhormat, Bapak Dr. Danang Srihatmoko, SSI MSc, dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone, Excellencies, the honorable speakers, Dr. K. Otsuki. Thank you for visiting Indonesia, especially UGM. Thank you very much for your kind collaboration, and also Professor Rijanta, and also the moderator, Pak Rahmat, Aris, Pratomo, as the moderator of the Studium General, and also all our colleagues from both faculties, Faculty of Geography and also Faculty of Forestry, Prof. Slamet, Bu Wiwi, Pak Gadjah, Pak Aris, and also all the students, and also I would like to say welcome to all the participants who participate online through a Zoom meeting in this Studium General. So first of all, I would like to thanks for your attendance in this Studium General. This is actually the collaboration between Universitas Gadjah Mada, Faculty of Forestry and Faculty of Geography, and also University Utrecht in Netherlands. So also I would like to welcome all the participants from East Kalimantan, from IKN, from Ibu Kota. Thank you for visiting daerah Yogyakarta. Yeah, so we call it the people from the capital city of Indonesia. Terima kasih from IKN, from Brida, East Kalimantan, yeah, and all the participants. So ladies and gentlemen, terima kasih, and it is a great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all in the Studium General. So I think the Studium General is actually is a part of the joint collaboration between University Utrecht and also Universitas Gadjah Mada. We back to 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, we have privilege, the great opportunity to welcome and to host the visit. The Dutch royal visit at UGM, the king and the queen at the time at UGM, not only at Jakarta but also in UGM, and it was followed by high-level meeting from the both countries. One of the key priority of in those discussion actually to establish the higher education collaboration between Dutch government and Indonesian government, and we agreed, the both government agreed to establish the research with regard to the national agenda, the priority of the national agenda on a new capital city of Indonesia at East Kalimantan, known as IKN or Ibu Kota Nusantara. So IKN become the strategic agenda of Indonesian government, since we know that the law is already established and the infrastructure development and the site of the Ibu Kota Nusantara already started, and the government expect that next year in 2024 some the governmental officers or ASN shall move to the new capital of Indonesia at East Kalimantan. So at the beginning, the spirit of IKN is to minimize the challenges and the problems arise. The series of problems is arise related to environmental and societal challenges at Jakarta, the current capital of the Indonesia, and to provide a comprehensive solution and to equal opportunities to the people at the east of Indonesia. As we know that Kalimantan, known as the new the center of gravity of Indonesia, as we know that Kalimantan in the middle of Indonesian territory. So the government established an innovative idea or concept. We call it the Forest City Master Plan. Of course, there are a lot of debate of this current national agenda, particularly on the sustainability issues related to the environmental, ecological, societal issues, deforestation, and of course the inclusive urbanization issues who arise very warmly. So I think this is actually the issue that we would like to tackle, the issue that we would like to respond through these collaborations. So in order to respond those strategic issues, so we, UGM and University Utrecht, thank you Dr. K. Otsuki as a representative from Utrecht University. We work very diligently by establishing this joint research. So this joint research aims at achieving the ecological sustainability issues, to address these issues, the disaster risk reduction, and also socio-economic inclusion in Kalimantan and beyond. Meaning that this research is also intended not only focus on this Kalimantan issue of IKN, the hurt, I would say, the hurt of the IKN, but also the surrounding area and the supporting islands could be. So, in addition to that, the strategic collaboration is intended to establish a framework, comprehensive framework, I would say, to study the emerging and the future impact of the fresh city planning and development. Ladies and gentlemen, so through this collaboration, we have very high expectation actually, through the highly inter and transdisciplinary approach. So we at UGM, we are recognized as very comprehensive university consisting 18 faculties and 2 schools. So we would like to build a solid foundation of fundamental and also applied research on these particular issues by involving the Dutch and Indonesian collaborators. So we would like to thank for this establishment of the research. I would like to thank especially Professor Rijanta, Dr. Aris who initiated this research, and of course from Indonesian side, and of course all the colleagues from Utrecht University who work very closely hand in hand in order to establish this research, this very strategic research. So we expect that also this research become the reference and also become the foundation of the decision-making process for the incoming years for the establishment of this IKN. So we also expect that this research collaboration is just the beginning of the collaboration between UGM and also University of Utrecht and also the local actors at the Kalimantan. So I would say that this research is quite comprehensive, involving not only the geographer but also forester, involving 2 universities as the main actors, but also we have a lot of collaborators in Kalimantan. And also we expect also the involvement of the local communities, as Professor Rijanta initiated for the KKN thematic, the student community services at Kalimantan, in order to have the engagement between the researcher, the students, and also the local actors in the area of IKN. And also for your information, that UGM this year we deployed around 7,000 students around over Indonesia, and it is the mandatory or a compulsory subject that they live with the communities during 2 months in order to understand what happened at the community actually, in order and also to work very closely with the community in order to provide some comprehensive solution for the problem arise at the grassroots level. And we expect that also this collaboration will continue and grow a lot in the future, not only in the research but also in the educational collaborations between UGM and also Utrecht University. And I learned that at 11 o'clock we will have a very fruitful discussion. We have a very engaging discussion to discuss the joint education program between UGM and also University of Utrecht through the undergrad, master, and also PhD program. So we really expect that this very strategic collaboration can be sustainable in the near future. And to all the speakers, Dr. K. Otsuki, and also Professor Rijanta, and also the moderator, Pak Rahmat Aris, as the moderator, we greatly appreciate for your contribution and we do waiting for your future sharing session, and we wish you all the very engaging and fruitful discussion in this Studium General. Thank you very much. And before I close my remarks, I would like to finally the Studium General on studying the frontier and development in Indonesia is officially open, and I wish you all the very fruitful journey. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thanks to Dr. Danang Srihatmoko, SSE MSc, who gave opening remarks at the Studium Generale this morning. As we will soon be entering the main program at the Studium Generale this morning, let us welcome Mr. Insinyur Rahmat Aris Pratomo, ST MT MSc IPM, as the moderator of the Studium Generale Studying Frontiers of Development in Indonesia, and our speakers, Dr. K. Otsuki, project investigator of the Dutch side of research collaboration on following frontiers of the veracity towards sustainable and inclusive urbanization in Kalimantan and beyond, and Professor Dr. R. Rijanta, MSc, project investigator of Indonesian side of research collaboration on following frontiers of the veracity towards sustainable and inclusive urbanization in Kalimantan and beyond. Come forward, please. Next is the presentation of material and discussion, which will be guided by Insinyur Rahmat Aris Pratomo, ST MT MSc IPM, co-investigator, researcher, and lecturer at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning Kalimantan, Institute of Teknologi. Of course, with his many achievements and works, we can't wait to immediately enter the main program of the Studium Generale this morning. Therefore, let's take a look at the Studium Generale on the topic studying frontiers of the development in Indonesia to Mr. Insinyur Rahmat Aris Pratomo, ST MT MSc IPM. Please, welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley, for giving me the time and also give a brief introduction about me. So yeah, I am Rahmat Aris Pratomo, a staff member of the Department of Urban, Regional and Planning, Institut Teknologi Kalimantan, which situated in Balikpapan, East Kalimantan. Actually, it is an honor for me to be part of this consortium, research consortium. From now on, I will lead the lecture and discussion session. Usually, I will start this kind of session with the pantun, but yeah, I try my best. But please, don't throw me the chair you are sitting on if my pantun is boring. So, are you ready for my pantun? Okay. One step, two step for a future. Memory flashing by a sense. Before starting the lecture, never forget to give an applause. In this awaited session, as mentioned by MC, that this is the main session, we have already here two distinguished speakers who will provide insight on studying frontiers of development in Indonesia, which is also part of the research consortium following frontiers of the veracity towards sustainable and inclusive urbanization in Kalimantan and beyond. Because of the time allocation is very limited, I may not explain about this consortium, but I'm pretty sure that one of our speaker will will briefly explain about it. So please allow me to introduce our two speakers. The first speaker is Dr. Kei Otsuki. She is an associate professor at International Development Studies, Faculty of Geoscience, Utrecht University. She has many publications related to social inclusion, sustainability, and frontier studies that were conducted mainly in global South country, especially in Africa and South America. With regard to the research consortium that I mentioned earlier, she is the principal investigator for the Dutch side. While our second speaker, I think most of the participants already know him, Professor Rijanta. He is a professor in Rural and Regional Development, Faculty of Geography, Gadjah Mada University. I wish I'm not wrong, Pak Ri, because I still want to go home safely without being hurt by your student, Prof. So, okay, he is also our principal investigator for the Indonesian side. So, please give a warm applause to all the speakers. Now I will invite Dr. K to give her presentation, your presentation, which will be followed by Professor Rijanta. So Dr. K, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Kei Otsuki. I come from International Development Studies Group of the Human Geography Department, Faculty of Geosciences. We are very close to Faculty of Geography. And I do come from Utrecht University in the Netherlands, but as you notice, I am not Dutch. I'm a Japanese researcher, now based in the Netherlands. And I would like to give a short presentation about, not only about our project per se, but I wanted to explain to you why actually we are doing this in the beginning, what motivated me to really get in touch with all the collaborators in the UJM, and where we want to go with this project together with you all. I think it would be nice if you are all interested. So I don't know if this was not the first. No, this is the second. Oh yeah, the first one is that one. So I cannot see that. Yeah, so in general, I want to explain a little bit about the frontiers of development before going into Indonesia, because that is, so I have to explain a little bit, no? This is the first time I came to Indonesia, so I told you I'm from Japan. But first, I went to Brazil when I was a master's student, because I was very interested in the frontier there, in the Amazon forest. So it's a very different context. And then from there, I went to Utrecht University. And then from there, I came here. So it's a little bit going around the world to get here, and I wanted to talk about that first. Next, please. So the project itself is indeed with all these partners. So Utrecht University and Gadjah Mada University are the sort of leading partners, but we have ULM from Kalimantan, ITK from Kalimantan as collaborators. Also from the Netherlands side, we have a collaborator from Delft, actually, because I will explain it a little bit later, but because we are also interested in the issue of water in Kalimantan. And for the more applied part, that Dean mentioned, that this is both fundamental and applied research projects. Applied part, we collaborate with the East Kalimantan provincial government and the peatland and mangrove restoration agency. And from the Dutch side, we have a private sector involved because we are expecting that as the new capital city develops, that more and more international investments will enter, and we want to have a dialogue with those people. Next, please. So the main objective of the project is, as the Dean already kindly introduced for us, it's about to establish a framework to keep on following frontiers of urbanization in East Kalimantan in this context of the construction of Nusantara, OEKN, to achieve ecological sustainability, disaster risk reduction, and socio-economic inclusion of different groups of people on Kalimantan. And these are three main pillars of the project, and I want to explain now why these are important, especially from the perspectives of the very academic research on frontiers. Next, please. So what are frontiers, in the beginning, to begin with? We have to know what the frontier means. So as I said, I first went to Brazil, and this is why I got interested in this case of Nusantara. Because in Brazil, in the 1960s, they moved capital city. I don't know if you know it, but from Rio de Janeiro, so that was also a very colonially built city, just like Jakarta was built by Dutch. Rio de Janeiro was also built by, Portuguese in the 19th century. And that was the coast. And they wanted to bring development to inland in the 1980s, or 1950s, when there was a military government. And they moved it towards the inside of the country. Now, frontiers opened up, frontiers of especially deforestation and urbanization. So when we talk about frontiers in the Brazilian context, I learned that deforestation frontiers expanded along roads, human settlements, changed land use and urban settlements, and that actually was motivated by this move of the capital city in the 60s. And this is something that this figure that I put over there about this frontier areas, that is so-called the arc of deforestation or frontiers of deforestation. This is not something that nobody planned this. What they planned, that the government planned, was to move the capital and then build the road to make a better connections with the other parts of Brazil. But then the effects of it is this kind of massive starting of deforestation, and I don't know, I think you've seen it in the media and in the past few years that the forests keep on burning, even though we all know that the forest conservation have been very important. Next, please. And especially the road is an interesting, I think, infrastructure to think about. Because as I say, so Rio de Janeiro was in the coast, and then they moved to Brazil. But then in order to connect it to the other side of the country, that they extended the highway. It's called the Belém-Brasília Highway. And then from there, people start also building their own little path to get their land or to go to the forest areas. So inside the let's say, road maps, that it starts looking like the photo that I took 20 years ago when I first went in one of along the road for field work. So it started this, so the forests, of course, will not only because of the road construction that the forest will disappear, but because of the extension and then people can enter, and then people can start their businesses, and then start farming or start building their houses. Of course, everyone wants to have a better life, so then they start pulling all these electricity cables, building cities themselves. So in this case, it was more about the kind of planned city leading to sort of spontaneous settlement and development, and then that's how it leads to the sort of massive socio-ecological changes. And I'm actually, I wanted to accompany this process, no? But then in the 1960s, I was not born yet, so I couldn't see it, the whole process. So when I saw this Indonesian government making an announcement about moving capital city in 2019, I think, from Jakarta to Kalimantan, I'm like, wow, this is going to, well, hopefully it's not going to be the replication of what happened in Brazil, but then we don't know. So that is the kind of first drive that I really wanted to observe or to study these frontiers. Next, please. So just a little, because this is a lecture for students, so I thought I would just explain also a little bit about the theory behind all this thinking about frontiers. Because there is a kind of linear development of how we think about and study frontiers. So the first major study on frontiers is actually coming from the States, United States, in the 19th century. The historian called, so before this, Frederick Jackson Turner wrote about frontiers' importance for the American development, everything was concerned about the more settled areas. So people were only talking about urbanization in the areas where that was not expanding or it was already established areas. But then he wrote for the first time, in that time when British comes to America and started to build their colonies and started to expand their settlements and all the mining, forestry, all the dynamics that actually you see it in Kalimantan, that was in the American West in the 19th century, that he wrote in one of those very famous books, in the first time, the existence of an area of free land, its continuous recession and the advance of American settlement westward explain American development. Now, this free land is a key, I will come back to that later. So the peculiarity of American institutions is rooted in the ability to adapt to changes involved in developing at each area of the progress out of the primitive economic and political conditions of the frontier into the complexity of city life. So what he's trying to explain is, for the first time, frontier is something that has to be conquered, has to be developed in such a way that primitive conditions such as rainforests, or primitive conditions such as indigenous people in this case, and at that time in American West, has to be conquered and civilized and bring it into the sort of city life. And what he supposes is this, there is a infinite free land in American West, so that you can occupy and then you can start building a new thing. Next, please. But of course, in the 1990s, so when I studied at the Amazon, or when I started to study, the frontiers are not like that. So there are lots of critical studies about this original idea of frontier, that we are going to the free land, we're going to civilize one area, but actually there are no such a thing as free land or limitless resources that somebody else can exploit, because there are different groups of people already living there that they had been actually made invisible in history. There are lots of indigenous groups that are not recognized just like American West, when they were just to be eliminated. So it's a bit like in the Amazon also, that people started to really write about actually frontiers are always very contested areas. And people have a different conditions of access to land or ownership of land. And land resources become one of the most important things that we have to think about. Because at the frontiers, the resource exploitation and enclosures, so people start building fences and, you know, this is my land, and then kicking out other people, that start becoming the kind of sources of conflict and sources of mismanagement of the resources, including deforestation. And so the frontiers are increasingly studied by various scholars who work in different contexts as more of the potentially conflictive encounters between different cultures, degrees of modernity, livelihoods, and values attached to them. So we are actually trying to understand these contestations or encounters, what happen. Next, please. So today, when we talk about frontiers or studying frontiers, how to study this, that it's very important that we know that frontiers are contested and unruly territories. We don't plan them. They will develop, and we have to anticipate. We have to have some kind of understanding that will happen, that the problems will happen. And we will, in a way, we will have to know how to deal with the consequences of, let's say, mega projects, or the kind of moving a capital city, or colonizing from one area to the other. So I will say there are kind of three aspects that I think is very important for us to know. So one is about, there have been very little studies on migration in relation to frontier studies, because it had been always about people just going, and there are a lot of studies indeed about, I don't know if you've heard of land grabbing or land dispositions. Those are part of the studies that had developed over the past, let's say, decade. But what kind of migrant groups, what kind of, and I learned in Indonesia, you have already the transmigrants programs in the 80s, and they are meeting with the new migrants or new government officials coming from Jakarta, and then they are not coming alone, right? They will come with all these different people attached to them, or all the business opportunities, the construction workers. I mean, these are going to be the kind of different groups of people that will flow into the frontiers. Together with them, the different types of financial capitals and impacts on different spaces and ecosystems. That's why we are also collaborating with the forestry colleagues, because we want to also understand the impacts on the environment, like a physical environment. Together with those new migration dynamics, we will see different types of dynamics. So this is we are witnessing the opening up of unruly territories, which means there will be illegal or illegal practices or somewhere in between, that we want to understand that. And together with that, in order to understand how these kind of new practices will happen, then we have to study how to govern the frontiers. Or we call it in the human geography terms territoriality, that who exercise power over newly opened space. Actually, is it the government, the IKN authority, or is it the provincial government who will have a limited influence, or people themselves of different groups of people start thinking about how to deal with that kind of governing their own spaces. Next, please. So in Utrecht University, in the Human Geography department, we have developed an approach called translocal development in order to address not only frontiers development, but I think it's one of the major conceptual development that we are trying to engage with, so how to map different flows, between different localities, places, human mobilities, global connections, so where the money actually comes from when the certain infrastructure like road is built. Now you think it's only, I don't know, Indonesian government building, but then Indonesian government is having money from different foreign capitals. Then we want to understand the connections between different actors actually broadly involved. And in the end, critical engagement with the so-called impact assessment. So there are very technical way of assessing impacts, but we also want to understand how to follow impacts as those flows develop in the frontiers, and what kind of institutions, who makes rules, in what point of time, and how we can actually improve institutions of governance of when, especially the impacts are evolving in a sort of detrimental ways for different groups of people and also forests that we were worried about. Next, please. So then I come to the frontiers of now, what we are talking about, the Kalimantan. So capital city is demarcated, designed with clear boundaries. All the official documents, you see it feels like they know what they are doing. And they will, but given the experience of Brazil, given the experience of all these contestations that will happen, that we are expecting that they will expand various contested frontiers around those demarcations. So currently we are trying to get the bottom of land issues. It's a classic, it's important, land development, especially the speculation. So we think, okay, the city is not built yet, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's already kind of happening. There's land speculation and the infrastructure building. So already some build roads, build water, canals, energy infrastructures are being built for the next year, but then also years to come, and that are already having some effects. And together with that, of course, the settlements will expand, so the different groups of people will encounter. So we want to know about those effects. Next, please. So far, I think we have been identified. So Indonesian team actually already started to do really field work in this area. And you are all invited to join us. And in the Dutch part also, we have a PhD and postdoctoral researchers working on the different contestations, so speculative urbanism, the effects of infrastructure on different groups of people. But especially what we identify so far is the impacts on forests, especially the coastal areas in the mangrove areas, different benefits for different groups of people in an areas, because we understand, for example, forest is managed by different groups of people. So this is also one area that we want to follow, and what kind of, for example, ecological corridors, or we can suggest still to the government that we shouldn't do this or that. Now, the selective river normalization infrastructure benefits, this is being investigated by one of the PhDs at the Utrecht, that now he's in Kalimantan, but it's also I find it very interesting, because river is seemingly very important element now in shaping these frontiers currently, and also who can access to the clean water, who can access to the river for their livelihoods, become selective when they start building infrastructure. New flows of capital, as I mentioned, new flows of people, migration, those are already being observed. And together with that, that we are witnessing some beyond planned land use and convergence that we have to keep on following to say maybe what kind of effects those unplanned land use will have. So in the end, what we are trying to do by focusing on frontiers is that the sort of spillover effects, so not only on, well, within Kalimantan also, but then indeed beyond. So other islands, other regions, what happens, because we know that all the construction materials, for example, for building a city comes from mining in Sulawesi, or new energy projects on Kalimantan actually come from different areas of North or South Kalimantan. So that we want to also understand it, so that translocally what happens in a frontier development on Kalimantan can be understood in a much more comprehensive manner. Next, please. I think it's the last. So we have very specific objectives. So this is what I've presented now is pretty much about knowledge, generate knowledge on processes and impacts, because after all, we are researchers, we're students, we are, our job is producing the knowledge on this whole phenomenon. But our project have two more applied objectives, which I find vitally important. One is about developing capacity of local researchers and citizens by strengthening existing research infrastructure, which means Gadjah Mada University is a very important university. I mean, it's not on Kalimantan, but then you are in Indonesia. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, so I'm very far away. But if the Gadjah Mada University, and then if they send students to Kalimantan and then collaborate with the universities in Kalimantan, and they sort of develop the research capacity there, and we can still work together to develop the studies together in the Utrecht and the research institutes in Kalimantan via maybe UGM. I think this is a way to go for a long time, because this kind of research project has only limited years of funding, and in the end we have like 4 or 5 years of collaboration fixed. And of course we can always try to extend it, but what is vitally important is the permanent sort of engagement, and that is why I think it's very important to together, jointly think about how to develop capacity together. And the third one is to establish a multi-stakeholder platform to co-design tools and to assess impacts of the mega project like IKN, and suggest short and long-term solutions to ensure sustainability and inclusivity of planned and unplanned frontier development. Next, please. So I will invite you in the end, so this is the last. How do we follow frontier development for sustainable and inclusive futures? So my idea is indeed, strengthening long-term collaboration between, so the strength of Utrecht University is we do have resources, in a sense that we do have, the academic literatures, publications, capacities. We can do it together. I think this year I really want to publish from these research projects together with Indonesian colleagues. But of course, Indonesian universities and organizations are embedded in the fields, sites, and the political context in which this whole big project happens. And to connect the national and international domains of research and collaboration is very important, because otherwise we cannot put influence on the government especially when things go wrong. And linking research with the education programs, because education program is semi-permanent, so we are educating young people who will pass on to the another generation. So education is vitally important, and then that is the function of the university. So Utrecht and Gadjah Mada also indeed want to strengthen more the exchange of students, learn from each other. You can come to the Netherlands, the Dutch students can come to Indonesia. I think that's very nice. And yeah, keep on writing, publishing, disseminating, so that we can also start really think about how to develop our agendas together. And last not but least, collective thinking about funding structures. So the research needs money, and then we have to have some kind of involvement of funding institutions in all this, our especially research funding institutions. And that is something that I'm thinking about in the coming short future, let's say, in the near future. And if you have any other ideas for collaboration, you are very welcome to approach me after the lecture, or we can exchange during this lecture time. Thank you very much. I will stop here and I'll pass it to Rijanta.
You're welcome. Pak Rip, thank you, Kay, for the presentation. Very interesting overview about the frontiers. And before I give a floor to Professor Rijanta, please allow me, Prof, to welcome the online audience. I forgot to mention about the online audience, because as I noticed, there is more than 100 participants attending online. So welcome all the online audience. I hope that you can enjoy our lecture and being interactive for sure. Maybe later on in the discussion session. Now, back to the lecture. Prof. Rijanta, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Aris. Before I proceed with my presentation, let me say hello to Pak Fitri, far away there in East Kalimantan. Hope you can join the presentation. See you tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, maybe. We are going to East Kalimantan together tomorrow. Ya, kita mulai dengan presentasi, Mas. Yeah, the title of my presentation is reminding me to an old book by Norton Ginsburg and Maggie inside this book. It is another another form of urbanization in Asia, and from this book we learn that urbanization in Asia takes form, among others, in form of what's so-called desakotasi, where a corridor between two cities are merged and creating a agglomeration together. And I imagine this will happen between Samarinda and Balikpapan, and from Balikpapan to the new capital city of Nusantara as well, but matter of time. This is our tentative observation from the field work, and also a bit review from the literature from urbanization in Asia. Next. Yeah, I will present my PowerPoint in some order. First, after the introduction, I will say something about the population and urbanization in East Kalimantan, and then some theoretical issues about this kotadesasi as a special form of urbanization in Asia. Then next, some spatial dimension of urbanization in Kalimantan, where I will talk about the urban systems and some agglomeration in Kalimantan, which is not too developed yet as far as the data concerned, then our discussion will come to kotadisasi in East Kalimantan, and finally I will conclude with a hypothesis. This is strange, but that's what I will do. I will not conclude, but I will put some hypothesis to work together with our team in East Kalimantan. Next. When we are going to talk about urbanization in East Kalimantan, we can start at the beginning. Is the population of East Kalimantan is simply 3.7 million. There's not too many people in East Kalimantan, and by 2022, the population of urban population is about 45%, meaning that about 1.8 million people living in urban area, and we have three agglomeration, one Balikpapan, Samarinda, and another one is Bontang. The rest of the cities in Kalimantan is still less than 100,000 population, meaning that the domination of Samarinda in Balikpapan is still very focal in East Kalimantan. And population growth is very high. This has been going on for many decades, yeah. And from the population census of 2020, the population growth is 3.77, almost 3.8, meaning that the population will be doubling only within 18 years. So if we have 3.7 million, so we expect to have about 8 million people by 8 years from now, 18 years from now, about 2041. Meaning that when we enter Indonesia Emas, Golden Indonesia 2045, the population of East Kalimantan will be about, let's say, something close to maybe 8 or 9 million only. So it's not too big in Indonesian terms if we compare to other provinces. And then this is the fact about agglomeration. The biggest city in Kalimantan is Samarinda, followed by Balikpapan. And then, of course, now we have IKN with investment of 450 trillion rupiah, but it is planned for the whole period up till 2045, meaning that, of course, the investment will go there gradually. And we have also another fact that from the official of East Kalimantan, there is an immigration flow about 600% daily. Yeah, so the urbanization process is going on very quickly, but of course we know that until let's say 18 years to come or 20 years to come, the population will not reach even 10 million yet. Then next, some basis for urbanization in East Kalimantan. We do have higher population growth, and most of them contributed by the components of migration, and then the migration is also continuously flowing through the province, and the province is also the third most important migrant destination after Jakarta and Riau. So this is because of the extractive economy, mining, oil and gas, and also recently we have a plantation like palm oil. Then the presence of IKN would lead to further urbanization. Of course, this will invite many people from all over Indonesia to come to East Kalimantan. We have to revise the projection probably if we want to have better figure representing more exact population by 2045. Urbanization in East Kalimantan, either from the normal trend as it is happened in many decades, and also now with the additional factor, the development of IKN, I think it offers an opportunity to learn how to study rural urbanization in resource frontier regions stimulated by large-scale investment, because this offers a very special context in the study of rural urbanization. The area is simply rural, but then many people come following the investment by government and other parties as a consequence of the development of IKN, and this is quite different from what has been studied before. As from the literature we can find that the many studies before on rural urbanization are focusing on area like Java, Malaysia, Thailand, Bangladesh, China, Korea, and the Philippines, especially in the most densely populated region of that countries. Next, this is a spatial configuration of a model proposed by Maggie, that in most ASEAN countries, the most especially those with high population density, the spatial structure of a region most probably having one or two major cities, and then behind that they have peri-urban. And behind this peri-urban city, usually there is a part of transition between rural and urban, but in Maggie's term, it is called desa kota. Another scholar said it is as a kota desa, and the process itself is called a desa kotasi, the process of change, process of transition from desa to kota. Desa means rural, kota means urban. But in some part, of course, the process of transition from rural to urban are happening without significant influx of population from outside. Normal growing population, then also with a process of densification, like the one just beyond Yogyakarta city. We have villages with density of above 10,000 people per kilometer square. It's very high one, and according to Central Bureau of Statistics, this part of the area has been categorized as urban. The same trends probably will happen in the corridors between Samarinda and Balikpapan to the new capital. And this, I would like to say that probably this will be very special one. It is quite different from the typology that proposed by Maggie. Next. Yeah, Maggie identified three different typology of desa kota regions. Type 1 regions are characterized by rural landscape, where most active works in non-agriculture activities. Many parts in China are identified, but probably also in Japan, without any relation with agriculture sector. And the second type is the desa kota type 2, in which region over varying period productive gains in agriculture industry and secular shift from agriculture to non-agriculture activities are focused mainly on the urban cores and adjacent region. This is especially the case of areas like Kerala and India and Yogyakarta, and the area of Joglo Semar in Yogyakarta, also the area between Yogyakarta and Solo. And then the Desa Kota type 3, a region with high density which economic growth is slow. This is a typical example in part of India and Bangladesh. Then next, the main feature of Desa Kotasi regions or Desa Kota regions, at least Maggie mentioned there are 5 or 6 features. Please show all of this. Population are commonly engaged in smallholder cultivation of rice, and in East Kalimantan we cannot find this one. And then increase in non-agricultural activities in areas that have previously been agriculture. Maybe in Kalimantan this happened, but the previous agriculture activities were plantation, so it is a bit different from what happened in the hypothesis of Maggie. Then the third, high population to and from the city and within the zone, and this is similar. Now we can already observe in the field that population mobility has been increasing as a response to the development of infrastructure. Many people moving from one city to another, and from the hinterland of cities to the to some city centers for their daily needs and for other businesses. And then also intense mixture of land use with agriculture, cottage industries, suburban development, and other activities side by side. This will happen in East Kalimantan very soon, because the local people seem to respond to the investment of the IKN by also investing on their own. Part of them using the money obtained from the compensation of land, their land that has been used as part of the development of the IKN. So many items from the hypothesis of Maggie are proven in somewhere else in Java, but in Kalimantan some are not met yet. Increase of participation of women, we need more information about this, because in the formerly Desa Kotasi region, the role of women are very important, and also we can observe daily in the area like the city of Gadjah and its surrounding, that many women are vendoring vegetable, fruit by using motorcycle. They are moving daily, and that's a very important source of livelihood for the people in the rural area beyond the city. Then, of course, this is also happening, but not very clear yet. But for the case of gray zones, meaning that some areas of this Kota Desasi, Desa Kota area is actually administratively it is rural, but in reality it is morphologically it is urban. This campus is a rural area because this belong to Desa Condong Catur, but morphologically it is an urban. We can see all the urban facilities you can easily find around this campus, and similar to this may not be found in the field of East Kalimantan yet. Next. Yeah, then I would present some perceptual evidence from the grassroots how local people of East Kalimantan perceive the development of IKN. First of all, from our in-depth interview to some local leaders, indicate that they have positive ethnic assimilation, meaning that they perceive that local people seeing the other ethnic groups as friends to cooperate with, and no history of conflict from one ethnic to another found in East Kalimantan. So this is a kind of communities living in harmony. Then it is as also normally where large-scale infrastructure project going on, lands are considered as a very important asset in the future, and it is also the reason that many people are trying to obtain a piece of paper of their land, but at this time the government stopped issuing such kind of papers. Then third, there is a growing external and internal interest in investing in the vicinity of IKN. So yeah, investors from outer island, I mean from Jawa especially, many coming to East Kalimantan to find lands, and also at the same time the local people also investing on their own business. Then there is also growing importance of migration and population mobility from especially at the local level and also from other islands. Then people also see that the infrastructure facilitates the local development. It is well demonstrated by the road built from the IKN to the rest of the cities around within East Kalimantan, that mobility are very easy now, and time to spend on the road from one point to another has been reduced very much. Then there is also growing tendency of the youth to work in the non-agriculture sector. Shifting from agriculture to non-agriculture sector is another indication of urbanization, that this is also found in the rural area of East Kalimantan, where the IKN is developed. And also IKN offers optimism, but also uncertainties. Uncertainties is partly and optimism. This is also the one of the character of the urban communities. Next. Yeah. Who is responding to this IKN first is a big business. Yeah, we can see they offer housing and apartment in East Kalimantan. Next. Yeah, not the conclusion. So the development of IKN may lead to a distinct pattern of urbanization, because the combination of road pattern, population density, agglomeration, demographic structure, economic structure, they may lead to this distinct pattern of urbanization. The existing pattern of spatial configuration, economic base, demographic characteristic, in combination with a firm policy on infrastructure development as part of the development of the new capital, would lead to specific patterns of urbanization. Desa Kota region as a form of urbanization will be one of the more probable pattern of urbanization in Kalimantan, in which intercity corridors play the primary role. So this will happen mainly on the intercity corridors. It is also the reason that our colleagues, our friends, focus on these corridors to study. Then probably this is a new type of Desa Kota region, following to Maggie's typology. The region will be characterized by rural landscape where the extractive economy is predominant in the provision of incomes and employment, accompanied by large-scale government investment in infrastructure. So the factors stimulating rural urbanization in East Kalimantan somewhat different from what happened in the typology of Maggie, type 1, 2, or 3. Thank you, Mas Aris.
Thank you, Prof. Rijanta for the presentation. It was fascinating what has been delivered by our two speakers. It can be underlined that the development of a new area, especially the one that has a huge level of importance, so like the capital city of Indonesia, not only promise a positive effect on the regional development, but also bring challenges which can expand to many other elements. So for that, I invite the audience who want to ask question for our speakers. Maybe I will open three questions first for the offline participant, and then this question will be followed by the other three questions. So, yeah, any question from the online or offline audience? Just raise your hand and introduce yourself. No? Nobody? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Please. Bapak, please introduce yourself and
Yeah, okay.
say
Thank you.
the question. Yeah.
Well, my name Wardani. I from Home Affairs, but I has break pensiun baru. I'm sorry, in English not good.
Okay.
Okay. Mungkin saya bahasa Indonesia saja. Ya. Baik, terima kasih atas waktunya. Kebetulan jabatan saya terakhir adalah PLT Direktur Toponimi dan Batas Daerah di Kementerian Dalam Negeri. Saya ikut sedikit terkait dengan pembentukan undang-undang IKN ini. Di sana memang sudah seperti tadi disampaikan oleh dua pembicara bahwa ini merupakan kota baru, pembangunan kota yang baru. Konsepnya Pak Rijanta tadi kota desasi ya Pak. Jadi selama ini ada urbanisasi, ada mungkin nanti perpindahan dari kota ke desa. Mungkin di sana juga bukan lahan kosong sama sekali, karena bahwa lokasi ibu IKN itu selama ini sudah ada beberapa penduduk yang ada, bahkan itu merupakan daerah transmigrasi yang semula transmigrasi ini menjadi ibu kota negara, suatu perubahan besar dari negara ini. Kalau ada beberapa daerah provinsi yang menjadi daerah transmigrasi menjadi provinsi seperti Sulbar, itu daerah transmigrasi menjadi ibu kota provinsi. Kemudian ada juga beberapa daerah transmigrasi yang menjadi daerah ibu kota kabupaten. Ini merupakan perubahan yang besar yang tentunya akan merubah tatanan-tatanan dari pembangunan itu sendiri. Memang itu perlu juga dipikirkan bagaimana menghadapi pembangunan yang akan terjadi di sana. Mungkin terjadi shock culture juga, shock culture dari masyarakat lokal yang nantinya akan menjadi suatu daerah tujuan perpindahan penduduk. Bukan penduduk dari desa ke kota saja atau tadi dari kota ke desa seperti itu. Karena otomatis tahun depan adalah terjadi perpindahan penduduk dari pemerintah pusat dari beberapa kementerian kepada ke sana. Ini sebagai transmigran pertama mungkin ASN. Ini transmigran bukan sembarang transmigran, ini mungkin ada level-level yang dirjen dan lain sebagainya, yang inilah yang menjadi perhatian. Mungkin peluang-peluang yang bisa dilakukan oleh masyarakat sekitar, itulah yang perlu dikembangkan, di-approve oleh suatu perguruan tinggi. Ini mungkin kesempatan yang baik juga, ini kerjasama antara Utrecht dengan UGM sebagai mungkin kedepannya bisa semakin baik menghasilkan teori-teori dan praktek, terutama ya teori dipraktekkan untuk pembangunan ini. Itu mungkin harapan kami yang bisa dilakukan oleh perguruan tinggi. Jadi nyata-nyata dari perguruan tinggi untuk masyarakat. Jadi ini hal-hal yang dapat kami sampaikan sedikit tadi yang saya menarik tadi, antara Pak Rianto bilang ada kepastian dan tidak kepastian tadi. Itu bahwa IKN bisa dilihat dari segi optimisme dan pesimisme. Ini tergantung dari sudut pandang mana untuk melihat itu. Demikian Pak komentar kami, dan mungkin ke depan bisa menjadi bahan dari kajian dari perguruan tinggi. Mungkin perkenalkan, saya Wardani, saya geografi 85 Pak ya, dan sekarang sudah masa pensiun. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you Pak Wardani. I think it's not a question, just a hope. Yeah, it's a comment from an input for us as a research collaboration to take a message to the field. Yeah, but maybe Pak Ri, you want to respond or do need to respond? I don't think.
Thank you Pak Wardani. Pak Wardani has a concern on that this research should contribute to the betterment of the life of the people over there, and also I would like to respond Pak Wardani. Our research is not only research for research, but for the time being we already send our students for a KKN thematic with the theme of preparing the local people around the IKN to face the coming change due to the development of IKN. Jadi kami menyiapkan masyarakat setempat dengan mengirimkan mahasiswa KKN. Tahun ini sudah angkatan kedua. Satu lokasi di pusatnya IKN, dibimbing DPL-nya Pak Dr. Elisa Putra di situ. Kemudian saya membimbing di sisi yang lebih rural di daerah Babulu. Setiap tahun kita menempatkan sekitar 20-25 orang di situ. Insya Allah tahun depan kita masih akan ke sana. Jadi memang menjadi perhatian kita. It is our concern that we have we anticipate some problems with change. So when many people coming as migrant population and the local people having low educational level, and they enjoy the local resources such as fish or other forest project easily, and then they have problems with education because they feel that life is easy by taking fish from the sea, and every day they can have a lot of money. But this will not be the case in the future when many people come there and competition will arise. They must be prepared from now. So that's what we are working with communities in these two villages that we have chosen so far. And Gadjah Mada has a lot of work in this Kalimantan in this KKN thematic. Terima kasih Mas Aris. If you have something to say, okay? Okay.
Thank you Prof. Rijanta. Any other question from the audience? Yeah, please, maybe from the left side. Mas, please introduce yourself and your question.
Hello, my name is Rainanda Sahari, and I'm from Environmental Geography Faculty, and I'm a new student here. I have a question. In short time, Indonesia was sorry. The new capital city of Indonesia was on the east part of the Kalimantan, and then near the capital city there was a huge of river there, and the city was environmental friendly. I have a question about the transportation there. Is the transportation make sure about the environmental friendly? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In Indonesia, I can say in Indonesia, ibu kota Indonesia yang baru di Kalimantan itu dirancang ramah lingkungan. Tapi apakah transportasi yang digunakan itu juga menjamin untuk ramah lingkungan seperti kotanya? Ya, itu saja. Terima kasih, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Mas, for your question. We go to the next question from the, maybe, I don't know, yeah, from the right side first, maybe back to Mas Umar, maybe, yeah, from the right side, Mas, yeah, right side, yeah, my right, sorry, my right.
Okay, thank you for the time. My name is Anto. I am from Environmental Geography. My question is, how optimistic, I mean, the notion of 15-minute city that are explicitly put into the regulation, that and all those buzzwords that are put, like 4-city, anti-sprawl city, 15-minute city, considering that the development of IKN is ongoing, like if I'm not mistaken, it is started in 2021 or 2022. How realistic is the notion of 15-minute city, like in Utrecht maybe, are achieved, considering the organic population growth, the organic settlement growth that are set happening in the outskirts of IKN. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas. So for the, maybe the other ones, so we can, Mas Umar, yeah, in the front, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Hello, Dr. K. My name is Umar. I'm a PhD researcher from King's College London. I have two questions for Dr. K and maybe one for both and one for Rijanta. For Dr. K, he talked about frontiers for this new capital city, and do you kind of follow frontiers that kind of, he spoke about translocality and all that, but do you follow kind of frontiers maybe kind of outside the country that kind of like has these connectivities with the new capital? I don't know if you've kind of explored that a bit. For example, maybe in Sarawak, in the other side of Borneo. And maybe for both Dr. K and Pak Rijanta, do you have any insights on kind of the kinds of land speculations done by real estate companies in the new capital city? I mean, I've heard kind of whispers around it, but I haven't been there just yet. And untuk Pak Rijanta, potensi desa kota di misalnya di Jawa atau di Sumatera menjadi mungkin pusat migrasi untuk ke desa kota di IKN itu apakah ada atau seperti apa kira-kira dibayangkan, Pak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Umar, for the question. So we go back to the first question. It's about the environmental response. from the how the develop response the environmental issue, especially about the transportation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, our research was focusing on villages beyond the KPPI, ya, apa namanya KPPI ya?
The center of the
Di luar pusat.
yeah, the outside beyond the
kawasan pusat pemerintahan, ya, beyond kawasan pusat pemerintahan. So actually we do not doing research inside the capital city. So your question, I think I can answer only from secondary or tertiary sources that maybe it is also normative, because what we understand that the existing location of this new capital city now, industrial forests, yeah, and by developing new capital over there, the government intend to recover the tropical forest there by reintroducing many kinds of species that used to be there. So that's from the point of the forest, but later Mbak Ari can add something. And then of course, as far as I know from the secondary sources, also that the plan consider very strictly about this environmental concern. Even the transportation system is called the smart transport, yeah. So it must be very environmentally friendly. That's what I understand from various documents. Then next question about how optimistic. Yes, few days ago I read an article by Universitas Indonesian College. A very short word that I remember is that Rome is not developed in one night, meaning that the process of becoming urban, from the development of IKN until becoming urban, it is projected to be long time. It doesn't mean that next year, when the independence ceremony is conducted in IKN, everything is there. The process of becoming urban is taking a long time. You can imagine Jakarta, what we understand now, is started from 1602. There is a long history to be a city that function with all complexities like center of government, then also service centers, manufacturing center, and so forth, and other function. But of course, the idea of IKN was the shifting the capital city to improve spatial balance. We always seeing the decision in that way. Indonesia is suffering from interregional balance, which has been for many decades, I think, from the beginning of the new order government. Even we already had this kind of imbalance, and the many efforts have been done, but none of this effort gave substantial effects. And I think this one is just a beginning, in my opinion, because you asked something about how optimistic maybe I am, yeah. And then the third about desakotasi. It takes time as well, because to have such kind of structure like Desa Kota region, we will need a lot of population in between the two cities. And probably if the two cities are connected by toll road instead of common road, this will not materialize as well. So there can be time consuming and also probably not happening because of the different kinds of road that they use. If you have a toll road, maybe it will not affect the area to grow as a desa kota region.
And I think Dr. K, you still need to respond for the last question.
Yeah, but I mean for environmental geographers, I think it's very important to be a little bit critical about how to assess impacts on environment. So I'm optimistic, or in the sense that if we know how to engage with the impacts on particular environment, so it can be smart and clean and everything very nice in the beginning, perhaps. And all the companies are also, who are working with the government, also have to assess impacts when they start the project. But then the problem with those impact assessments technically, that they hardly follow, so they don't follow the impacts of those new technologies or new systems on different social groups. So the environmental impacts have to be assessed together with the social impacts assessments, and those are the kind of areas that are not very well developed for the long-term following of particular projects, and I think it's very important that you think about it a bit. So that's why we want to also work with actual impact assessors in this project to improve the practice, that everyone knows there are problems with the actual techniques. About your question about land speculation, right? Or the first was about the translocal effect. Yeah, so we are we're starting to look at the translocal effect of the city. So, but then we want to follow a little bit for the long-term effect. So now what we did was that, for example, Bosman, our postdoc researchers, went to Sulawesi to follow the new mining development that is happening because of the IKN on Kalimantan for the extraction of new mining development on the construction materials that are not available on Kalimantan, so they have to go to the island, and we try to understand the dynamics of it. And I think there are different things will happen, especially the smart technology part. I find it interesting because that will also, you need a nickel or new minerals for the electrification of every transport in Kalimantan, that they want to develop actually the 100% electric vehicles, smart city, very clean, everything will be very green. But yeah, what does it mean in relation to the raw materials that will be produced in somewhere else? And then maybe you have to destroy another area in order to be green in another area. So it's not, without becoming cynical, we have to be aware of that possibility. And Indonesia is actually an interesting country because, you know, each island and region has different, well, extractive resources that can affect those, translocal relations. And I think that's something that we want to follow indeed. And about the land speculation, the interesting thing is actually so we started to really think about this whole land grabbing debate in Kalimantan, that, you know, how the foreign investments will start buying up all the land for like a real estate development or so on. But actually foreign investments got all cancelled, so they are not there that much for various, well, mostly political reasons, I understood. But the domestic investments and also very local land brokering apparently are becoming very active. So, you know, people themselves are starting to transact land, legal, illegal. And I think that dynamics will only intensify. And actually, in relation to optimism, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. You know, if local people start, especially women apparently, that there were some, you know, dealing with, oh, you don't want to, you get a lot of WhatsApp messages if you start showing interest in buying land, then there are lots of land around Balikpapan and somewhere, like they try to offer you some land. And I think that's maybe a new business that they're locally developing, the new way of indeed understanding how the urbanization actually works, and in this kind of situations that we don't know yet. And there is another, like a field of so-called extractive urbanism, so where the extraction economy was so strong, like East Kalimantan, and when the urbanization starts happening around that, you know, what kind of speculation will happen, that will be something that we don't know much about. So I think it will be a very interesting research topic in that regard. Does that answer your question, actually? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
There is someone online asking for, there is a question. Is there a more recent model concept other than the Maggie's model? So far, no, there is no more recent model, but I'm using the model of Maggie to see the typology of kota desa in Kalimantan, and I could not find any one of the typology is fully matching with the one in Kalimantan. In East Kalimantan, as we can read now, is the driver for urbanization is a large-scale investment from government, and also the especially in the development of new capital. This is not the case of the other typology of Maggie. And then also the area of East Kalimantan has been for many decades as province with strong association with extractive economy and high intake of migration from other parts of the country. This is not the case of the typology 1, 2, and 3 from Maggie. So I have a hypothesis that there will be type 4 of Maggie's model in East Kalimantan. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Professor Ri. So since we only have about 6 minutes left, so I will welcome or invite another online participants who want to ask question directly, perhaps, so you can use the raise hand option or menu to ask the question, or or maybe if not, then we can go to this question, perhaps.
Yes, there are two. There is one question for me online and 2 questions for K. Otsuki. You can read here. Pak Rianto, IKN development will marginalize the local community. What is the right transition model, tactical reference, not just conceptual idealism? Okay, I just want to answer this question. The marginalization of local people has been happening for a long time, since 1965. Then the introduction of plantation, transmigration, and then also other and forestry. Yeah, and then IKN is the last to come, the last comer when the composition of the population of the area has been very heterogeneous. So I'm not sure whether this can be Of course, this can be seen as a marginalization, but then our colleagues who is working on this aspect actually somewhere here also, maybe he can say something about this later. Okay, now your turn.
Okay. So the second question is about the when you mentioned about knowledge production, to what extent will local people be involved in such production in a way? It's, so one thing is indeed that we are well, collaborating with this community services and students interacting with the local people. And the production indeed is something that we have to write together, or involve perhaps to some extent the local people in the conversations about our knowledge production. And indeed this is a very important area that we have to think about how best we can do it, and how much people themselves want to be included in that. And we are starting to closely having those collaborations on the ground, and I think we will find the best way on the way. And is it about the investment? So is it possible investment allocation 30% for the future environmental endowment, or is there a recommendation for the right investment model? That's an interesting, or how do we do this, right? Because so again, it's not so much the problem is about the investment per se, but it's about distribution of benefits. So of course people want investments, the government wants investments, everyone wants investments, and how to secure the investments in such a way that different groups of people have a say and say, this is what the money should be distributed in what way for their. So it's a bit linked to the question of justice, in the sense that how best we use the investments. So how much percent for the environmental endowment? I actually particularly do not have an idea how much percent will be good, but I think that's also something which should be a part of deliberations somehow among communities and among governments that facilitate investments, and how much maybe it's indeed our responsibilities as researchers to indicate what's the sort of modality of distributing the investments and how. So maybe it's also actually linked to the local knowledge production. I mean, how do we do this together, right? With communities, with the local researchers, government officials, who receive actually those investments on the ground. So I think that's something that's, yeah, indeed, thank you for the questions. I think it will be good to really think about.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. K and Professor Rijanta, for responding all of the question. Sadly, I have to stop our session because our time is over. Maybe, yeah, I hope that we can meet in the further lectures or discussion. Again, give applause to all of us. And now I would like to turn the attention back to the MC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Insinyur Rahmat Aris Pratomo, ST, MT, MSc, IPM, as the moderator in the public lecture activities for an interesting and extraordinary discussion this morning. We would also like thank you for Dr. K. Otsuki and Professor Dr. R. Rijanta, MSc, for being speakers in this morning's Studium General. Okay, please take a seat for Dr. K, Professor Rijanta, and Mr. Aris to return to their respective seats. Please. All right. The next session was the presentation of a souvenir by Dr. Danang Srihatmoko, SSI MSc, as Dean of the Faculty of Geography, University Gadjah Mada, to Dr. K. Otsuki as Project Investigator of the Dutch side of research collaboration on following frontiers of the forestry towards sustainable and inclusive urbanization in Kalimantan and beyond. Please come forward, Dr. K. Yeah. Untuk mengabadikan momen berharga ini, dipersilahkan Dr. K. Otsuki, Prof. Rijanta, Mr. Aris, dan hadirin sekalian akan dilakukan dokumentasi foto bersama. Oleh karena itu, sesi dokumentasi akan dilakukan secara luring. To capture this precious moment, Dr. K. Otsuki, Prof. Rijanta, Mr. Aris, and all attendees will be doing photo documentation together. Therefore, the documentation session will be conducted offline. Please, ladies and gentlemen, come forward and come closer to take a picture together. So please, for the audience to take a picture with us together. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you to all the participants in the Studium Generale Studying Frontiers of the Development in Indonesia this morning, who have reached on the end of the event. Since at the beginning of the event we start with a prayer, it will be better if we close the event this time with a blessing as well. Okay. I am Charles, as the Studium General Committee for Studying Frontiers of the Development in Indonesia, would like to say goodbye and apologize if there are actions or words that are not pleasing. Thank you to all the attendees who attend the Studium General this morning. See you at the next Studium General event. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Terima kasih, thank you, and Goodbye.
Recording stopped.